You're not in the will, not one penny, my stepmother sneered. The lawyer smiled. Ma'am, the trust already transferred $50 million to her. Henderson Elias and Associates law offices smelt of aged leather and money. I waited in the waiting area, admiring the oil paintings of stern-faced partners, while my stepmother Calista held court with her children, Dorian and Chloe, whispering excitedly about their spending sprees. First thing I'm doing is buying that yacht, Dorian said, swiping through his phone. The 60-footer we looked at in Miami. I'm thinking of a house in the Hamptons, Chloe explained, flicking her blonde hair. Something tasteful, maybe 8 bedrooms. Calista stroked their hands with her finely manicured nails, which had been burrowing into my father's riches for the previous 7 years. Now children, let's not be gauche. We'll discuss investments after we handle the formalities. She flashed me a venomous glance from across the waiting room. I answered by checking my phone and pretended to be engrossed in emails while she sat. Though I don't know why she even bothered showing up, Calista said quietly on stage. Thaddeus made his wishes very clear before he died. Thaddeus. She couldn't even call him my father right now. The receptionist appeared. Mr. Elias will see you all now. We entered the conference room where James Elias was waiting with my father's will folder spread out before him. He was trying hard to keep his professional demeanor, but something in his eyes suggested he was holding back amusement. Please everyone, have a seat, he urged, pointing to the chairs. Can I offer anyone water? Coffee? This might take a while. Let's just get this over with, Calista replied swiftly, sliding into what she plainly saw as the dominant position at the table. I have a meeting with my financial advisor at 3. Of course. Mr. Elias opened the folder. First, let me express my condolences on the loss of Thaddeus Morrison. He was a client for over 30 years and... Yes, very sad. Calista interjected. Now, about the estate division? Mr. Elias's eyes moved slightly. Indeed. Let's begin with the reading of Mr. Morrison's last will and testament, dated 5 years ago. 5 years? I inquired quietly. Wasn't it updated more recently? Callista's laughter was as piercing as broken glass. Oh, sweetie. You really don't understand how these things work, do you? Thaddeus and I revised everything after our wedding. Made sure the estate stayed in the immediate family. The immediate family, I reiterated. Meaning? Meaning the people who actually cared for him in his final years, Calista replied kindly. Not the daughter who barely visited. Too busy with her little non-profit job to spend time with her father. I recalled all the visits she'd inexplicably arranged during her hair appointments. She failed to inform me about the family dinners. When my father inquired about me, she always told him that I was too busy. Shall we proceed? Mr. Elias inquired, revealing a curious glint of restrained mirth. Please do, Calista said. I believe you'll find everything is quite straightforward. The estate is divided between myself and my children, with a small token left to charity. As for Solene here, she gets nothing, Calista proclaimed triumphantly, unable to restrain herself any longer. I made sure of it. 7 years of marriage, and I finally got Thaddeus to see sense about his ungrateful daughter. You're not in the will, Solene. Not one penny. The room went silent. Dorian and Chloe were grinning like sharks that had smelled blood. Calista resembled a cat who had swallowed an entire aviary. That's when Mr. Elias began laughing, not a chuckle. This is not a professional throat clearing. A hearty, genuine chuckle rang through the wood panels. I'm sorry, he admitted, wiping his eyes. That was unprofessional. It's just Mrs. Morrison. Do you know what a revocable living trust is? Callista's triumphant expression flashed. Of course I do. It's a financial instrument. Very good, Mr. Elias replied, choking back giggles. And do you know when Thaddeus established his children's trust? Children? Calista demanded. He only had one child with her. Actually, Mr. Elias pulled out another much thicker folder. Thaddeus established the Morrison Family Trust 28 years ago, when Solene was 10. It's been growing ever since. So. Callista's voice was losing confidence. He revoked it when we updated the will. Did he? Mr. Elias retrieved a document. Because I have here the trust documents, including all amendments. The last one was made 13 months ago. You know what's interesting about trust, Mrs. Morrison? Calista murmured nothing as her face began to pale behind her pricey makeup. They're completely separate from wills, Mr. Elias explained. And in this case, the trust was structured to transfer all assets to Solene on either her 38th birthday or upon Thaddeus's death, whichever came first. That's impossible, Calista said quietly. Solene, Mr. Elias asked me. When was your birthday? 14 months ago, I replied gently. Dad threw me a party. A small one. Calista was at a spa this weekend. Ah yes. Mr. Elias nodded. The weekend Thaddeus came to see me. He was quite specific about the timing, wanted to make sure everything transferred cleanly before any potential complications. Ma'am, he continued, going back to Calista, you can't change a trust that already transferred $50 million last year. Callista's cheeks as white as fresh paper. Her mouth expanded and closed like a landed fish. 50? Dorian's voice broke. 50 million, Mr. Elias clarified. That was the value 14 months ago. With the market performance and the dividend reinvestments, it's currently valued at approximately $57 million. But the houses, Chloe cried, the cars, the bank accounts. All held by the trust, calmly answered Mr. Elias, which transferred to Solene last year. You've been living in Solene's houses, driving Solene's cars, and spending Solene's money for the past 14 months. I finally spoke. Dad told me to wait, said it would be better to let everything play out naturally. He wanted to see if you'd change, Calista, if you'd stop being so... I couldn't find it. Inquisitive. This is fraud, Calista exclaimed. We'll sue. Thaddeus wasn't in his right mind. Actually, Mr. Elias took out a medical report. Thaddeus had a comprehensive cognitive evaluation 13 months ago. Perfect scores across the board. He also had 3 psychiatrists confirm his mental capacity. He was, and I quote, sharp as a tack and twice as pointed. His words, not mine. But why? Dorian inquired, his expression betraying genuine confusion. Why would he do this? I stared at him with something like pity. Because he saw what you were doing. All of you. The credit cards you took out in his name, Dorian. The jewelry you bought and charged to his accounts, Chloe. And you, Calista. I turned to face my stepmother. The systematic isolation from his friends and family. The medication mix-ups that kept him foggy. The way you moved your mother into the guest house without asking. You can't prove any of that, Calista screamed. I don't have to, I replied. Dad did. I don't have to, I replied. Dad already did. He hired a private investigator 2 years ago. Would you like to see the reports? Mr. Elias presented another folder filled with images and documentation. Thaddeus was particularly interested in your first marriage, Mrs. Morrison. How did your first husband die again? Medication mix-up, wasn't it? The silence was terrible. Now, Mr. Elias said vigorously. Let's discuss the actual will. It's quite simple. To my beloved wife, Calista Morrison, I leave the sum of $1, the amount she truly deserves. To Dorian and Lyra Whitfield, I leave the same, the remainder of my estate consisting mainly of personal effects since the trust already transferred all assets, goes to Solene. He took out 3 $1 and put them on the table. That's it? Chloe whispered. $1? Actually, I explained, reaching inside my purse. I have something for each of you. I took out 3 envelopes. Eviction notices. You have 30 days to vacate my properties. All of them. You can't evict us. Calista jumped up so quickly that her chair tipped over. I'm his widow. You're a tenant, I corrected him. Living rent-free in my house. Well, houses. The main estate, the beach house, the mountain cabin, and whatever apartment Dorian's been keeping in the city. How did you do? Dorian asked. The same way Dad knew about your gambling debts, I said. And Lyra's shopping addiction, and Callista's interesting investment history. You weren't nearly as clever as you thought. Mr. Elias cleared his throat. There is one more matter, Thaddeus's letter, to be read after the will. He took out an envelope and handed it to me. He insisted you read it aloud. I opened it and recognized my father's handwriting. My darling Solene, if you're reading this, it means our plan worked wonderfully. I apologize for the lie, but I wanted to know who Calista truly was, and I needed to keep you safe while I found out. You were correct to be skeptical when I remarried so soon after your mother died. You've always had exceptional intuition. What you didn't realize was that I was already sick. The cancer diagnosis arrived just weeks after the wedding. Calista seemed like someone who would look after me. Instead, she exposed her actual self. Thank you for believing me when I urged you to play along. Thank you for pretending to be pushed aside when I transferred funds into the trust. Thank you for allowing them to think they had triumphed while we safeguarded your future. Calista, Dorian, and Chloe, I understand exactly who you are. The investigators' reports are with the district attorney, who has pledged to evaluate them following my death. I recommend that you use your 30-day notice properly. Solene, my daughter, you are all I could have wished for. Strong, patient, intellectual, and most importantly, good. Take care of the riches I've left you, but most importantly, look after yourself. With all my love, Dad. P.S. Your mother's engagement ring is in my desk drawer, second to the left. Calista started eyeing it, so I hid it. It's yours now, just like she always meant. Calista had collapsed back into her chair before I finished reading. Dorian was feverishly texting, most likely his bookie. Lyra was crying, black mascara dripping down her face. Is there anything else? Calista asked Mr. Elias, her voice scarcely audible. Just this, he continued, bringing out another document. A restraining order. Solene. Filed it this morning. You're to have no contact with her after you vacate the properties. Any attempt to contest the trust or will shall result in immediate enforcement. You planned this, Calista replied, looking at me. You both planned this. Dad planned it, I explained. I just followed his lead just like you followed the same playbook you used on your first husband. Oh, did you think Dad didn't know about Charles? About the insurance policy? About the medication you gave him? That was never proven, Calista replied immediately. No, I agree. But it's interesting how history repeats itself, or would have, if Dad hadn't been smarter than you gave him credit for. I stood and collected my copies of the documents. Mr. Elias, thank you for everything. For helping my father protect what mattered most to him. My pleasure, he replied, still suppressing a smile. Your father was a brilliant man. This was the most elegant estate planning I've ever seen. As I approached the door, Calista said, Solene, please. I was his wife. Doesn't that count for something? I turned back. It counts for exactly what you put into the marriage: lies, manipulation, and greed. Dad figured out your true value, Calista. $1. He was generous. I wouldn't have given you that much. I left them there in disbelief, staring at their dollar bills. In the parking lot, I sat in my vehicle. Not any more trust. Actually, mine. And exhaled a breath I had been holding for 14 months. My telephone rang. Maeve, Dad's nurse, was the only one Calista couldn't fire. How did it go? She inquired. Exactly as Dad predicted, I remarked. Down to Callista's demand for proof. He'd be so proud, Maeve added quietly. He talked about you constantly those last weeks. Said you were the only person who never wanted anything from him but his time. I miss him, I said. I know, honey. But he made sure you'd be okay. That was all he cared about in the end, not punishing them. Though that was a nice bonus, just making sure you were protected. After we hung up, I drove to the cemetery. Dad's grave was decorated in fresh flowers. I'd been coming every week, but Calista had told everyone I never came. We did it, Dad, I said quietly to the headstone. Just like you planned. They never saw it coming. The wind rustled the trees, and for a brief moment, I thought I could hear his laugh from when we were sitting in Mr. Elias's office, signing paperwork while Calista spent the weekend at the spa. She thinks she's so clever, he'd stated before. But clever and smart aren't the same thing. You're smart, Solene. You know the difference between taking care of someone and taking them for everything they have. I placed a solitary rose on his grave, which was his favorite. The coral ones from Mom's garden, which I still kept. And went home. Not to the estate, where Calista was most likely feverishly packing, but back to the modest house Dad had covertly purchased in my name years ago. The one where I'd been living quietly, making them believe I was struggling while the trust gained wealth. Dad was correct. Clever and smart were not synonymous. Calista was a brilliant person. I assumed that would be the end of it. I thought stepping out of the law office with a restraining order and a triumph would bring me comfort. But I had underestimated Calista. She was clever, remember? And bright people do not take humiliation lying down. It began 3 days following the reading. I was deadheading flowers in the garden behind the modest house Dad had bought for me, allowing the silence to settle in like a salve on a sore. That's when I noticed the first envelope. No stamp, just hidden inside my gate. White. Thin. Address me in red pen. There was a snapshot inside. I'm outside the grocery shop, leaning over to recover a dropped receipt. Taken from behind a bush. I froze. A note was scrawled across the bottom with the same red pen. Nice car. Shame if something happened to it. I called Maeve first. She was horrified. You need to go to the police, she said. Now. I did. They took my statement and photograph. But the officer just gave a sympathetic shrug. It's hard to prove intent with something like this. Could be a prank. Could be nothing. Just keep a log of everything. I wanted to shout. Nothing. We were chatting about Calista. This woman removed her dying husband's pals from his life like chess pieces. Of course she wouldn't leave peacefully. The following event occurred 4 nights later. My doorbell rang at 2:13 a.m. I sat up in bed, heart in my throat. I grabbed my phone and viewed the camera stream from the doorbell app. No one. I turned on the front porch light. Still nothing. But when I opened the door, a brick landed on the porch with a thump. It was balanced against the door and someone had scrawled into the side, "Get out." This time, the police arrived. They performed a sweep. There are no traces of forced entry, no fingerprints. There are no footprints. Nobody had seen anything. They offered to enhance patrols but reiterated, no real threat. Not yet. I changed my locks the following day. I upgraded my security system. Purchased 2 extra cameras. And then the rumors began. I received a call from the head of the organization where I worked. "Solene, I wanted to speak with you personally before this gets around. Someone's been sending anonymous tips to the board alleging financial misconduct." My heart has stopped. What kind of misconduct? Personal use of donor funds, unauthorized travel, lavish expenses, all of it dated within the last 18 months. That's impossible. "I believe you," she replied kindly. "But the board has to review the claims. We'll be doing a full audit. In the meantime, we need you to take a leave of absence." I hung up and screamed into the stillness of the home. Calista wasn't only out for vengeance. She was attempting to erase me. Bit by bit. I considered going public. Posting everything. The will, the trust, the threats. But my father had advised me against it. She thrives in chaos. You stay silent. You hold the high ground. I lasted 2 weeks. Then Dorian showed up. He waited outside the building where my support group gathered. I noticed him resting against a black automobile I recognized from the family's fleet. He was thinner, pale, but he's still wearing a Rolex and attempting to seem smug. "What do you want?" I asked without stopping my pace. "We need to talk. There's a restraining order. Not for me, just for Mom, and I think you should hear this." I paused, just for a second, but that was sufficient. He slipped a folded piece of paper into my hand. "Check that account. You'll see what she's been hiding." I did not sleep that night. I remained up digging, utilizing what Dad had taught me about asset tracing. The account was authentic. Offshore. Cayman Islands. What about the beneficiary? Lyra Whitfield. What is the amount? $1.4 million. I still went. Then I checked for more. There were 5 accounts. All have opened during the last 2 years. All are linked to shell businesses. All are tied to Calista's mother, Lyra, or Dorian. All funded by transfers from a now-defunct charity foundation that Calista had formerly co-chaired. I stared at the figures. She had not merely planned to inherit. She had been stealing long before Dad died. What if I could find it? So could the Internal Revenue Service. I called a friend of Dad's, a retired tax attorney named Alaric. "Are you finally ready to burn her down?" he said, his voice dry. "I want it public. I want everything exposed. Then you need the media, and you need to file with the DOJ." We spent the next 6 days putting together the case, and once it was sealed, I sent a complete packet to the local district attorney, the IRS Criminal Division, and 3 investigative journalists. Then I waited, and waited, until a knock came, not at my door this time, on Calista's. They arrested her at the country club mid-lunch, mid-mimosa. In front of everyone she wanted to impress. I did not see it in person, but someone provided me with a video. It went viral on Facebook in less than 3 hours. Calista, wearing a silk blouse and large sunglasses, is handcuffed by 2 federal agents. Dorian attempted to stop them and was tackled. Lyra yelled, "This is a mistake." However, the facts did not care about theatrics. 3 counts of wire fraud. 2 counts of money laundering. 1 case of elder abuse. The last one hit the hardest, because that meant Dad. The DA called me 2 days later. "Ms. Morrison, thank you for your cooperation. This case would have taken much longer without your documentation. Will there be a trial?" "Most likely not. Her lawyers are pushing for a deal. She knows we have her." I thanked him. Then I hung up and headed to the beach home. Not for vengeance. To wrap things up. It still smelled like her perfume. Fake lilies and something floral would always make my throat itch. I opened every window. Let the salt air drive her away. I found the old photo books under the bar. One was torn in half. It was a photo of Dad and me at 17, clutching a college acceptance letter and him grinning as if I were the son. She had attempted to delete it. I taped it back together. The eviction notices stood. Naturally, Dorian and Lyra fought them. They argued that they had a lifestyle right to the residences, but the judge didn't buy it. By the end of the month, they were gone. And the best part? The same reporters that saw the arrest video wanted to know my tale. I told them everything. Not with malice, not with brutality. Just the truth. The rise and fall of a woman who believed she could outsmart everyone. The daughter who played the long game. People began reaching out. Strangers. Women. Daughters. Nurses. Lawyers. Calista is an example of someone who has endured. They called me brave. Some people dubbed me a hero. But I did not feel like one. I just felt liberated. Dad's grave received more flowers that month than ever before. One evening, I sat on the mountain cottage porch, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and a cup of tea in my hands. Maeve came to visit. We watched the sunset silently. "He really did it," she finally said. "He protected you even after he was gone." "He always kept his promises," I said softly. There was a letter in my pocket. Another one from Dad. Alaric noticed a second sealed envelope in the trust lockbox. Inside was a single sentence. "She built her kingdom on sand. You, Solene, were always the stone." I cried for the first time in weeks. Not because I was sad. But finally I felt whole.